"This is Mr. Wren, and I'm Mr. Froll," one of them said. If you ask me now, I wouldn't be able to tell you which is which. They were both middle-aged white men, brown hair, clean-shaven, and wearing dark sunglasses. "You may have received an email from our company server by mistake last night. Did you?" At that moment, I had never been so appreciative of my grandparents teaching me how to play poker. I frowned and looked upwards to the left, acting like I was trying to remember. I told them I had gotten it, but that I marked it as spam and deleted it. "Would you mind showing us?" one of them asked. He smiled and took his sunglasses off, probably in an attempt to appear more cordial. The second kept his glasses on, which made it impossible to see where he was looking. "If we don't ask, our bosses are guaranteed to give us hell for it," No Sunglasses said. I agreed and logged on to my university email. I pulled up the trash folder and showed them the unread email. "We really do apologize for this," the first man said. "We've been installing new internal servers and we've been having trouble with stored addresses and queuing emails. The system is meant to automatically find the correct email address, but it's been attaching wrong domain names to IDs that are close." They watched as I deleted it totally and seemed content. Each of them shook my hand, reminding me that the email was under corporate non-disclosure, and walked out. As soon as they were gone, I shut the door and collapsed into the chair at the computer. What kind of company was this? How in the world did they find me, find where I worked, and then send people in less than 24 hours? I looked at the USB in my bag, but I didn't touch it. In some way, I worried that I had damned myself with it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it would end up being more important than not. I finished up my workday and headed home. The next day was Saturday, and we needed to mow. While some of you might think, well, mowing took a whole day, I could only respond by saying that one of the downsides of having land is taking care of it. We had 2 tractors, so Faye and I could mow at the same time and finish in as little time as required. Before I explain what happened that Saturday, I need you to understand something. Without fail, I serviced those tractors every time after we used them. I cleaned the mower decks, sharpened the blades when they needed it, and double-checked the engine. I checked oil and gas before and after using them. Yes, I'm a little OCD, but it's been a bit of more help than harm. Faye and I typically use the same tractor, but she told me that her tractor felt like it was pulling to the left instead of going straight ahead. I told her to use mine, and I would check it out. She started the tractor and began to mow our field. The tractor worked fine for about 15 minutes. Then the engine began to sputter and cough. I noticed it and waited for Faye to stop. She did. Shutting the tractor off, started to walk towards me. Several things happened all at once. I stood up, walking to meet my wife halfway. Faye walked towards me, smiling. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a dark maroon sedan slow down as it passed by our house. The tractor exploded behind my wife into a fireball. Pieces of metal and rubber flew in every direction, and the shockwave knocked Faye forward onto the ground. The blast of heat hit me full in the face, and it felt like I dropped face first into a bonfire. I ran to her, scared shitless. She was fine, though the wind had been knocked out of her. I moved her to the garage and told her to call 911. And I ran back to the burning husk of my tractor with a fire extinguisher. I used the entire extinguisher, but I couldn't get the blaze to totally stop. The next few hours were a blur. The fire department showed up, followed by police. The neighbors gawked from their front porches, and we were asked the same questions again and again. The cops asked if either of us had any reason to suspect foul play. God help me, I should have mentioned the meeting with the 2 men at work in the email. But I kept my mouth shut. What would I have said anyway? "Oh gee, officer, I received an email last night from a company making a biological weapon out of Ebola. Today, 2 men in dark suits showed up at work to ask me about it in a somewhat vaguely threatening manner." I would have laughed at that myself, as someone else said it. By the time everyone had left, we were exhausted and starving. We loaded up the puppy into my car and went to Faye's parents' place, where her dad cooked on the grill, and I got lectured on the importance of taking care of my tools. The thing is, I did. I still do. There's no reason for that tractor to explode. After dinner, we went back to our home. There was a huge circle of blackened dirt, burnt grass in the field where the tractor had exploded, but otherwise there was no sign of the circus that had filled our lives only a few hours ago. Faye was exhausted, and she went straight to bed. I couldn't sleep. I kept running over every check of the tractor that I had done, trying to see where I could have gone wrong. The fuel lines weren't loose, no matter what my father-in-law insinuated. There had been no reason for it to explode. Now, probably feeling my paranoia, I needed to double-check the other major property that gave my OCD an outlet on. The guns. Yes, I own guns. I grew up around them, and they're only tools. Treat them with proper respect, and there's nothing inherently wrong with them. We had a shotgun in the living room on top of the television stand. There was a handgun in the kitchen, a holster screwed at the bottom of the cupboards between the fluorescent lights for the counter, and a revolver my wife kept on her nightstand. Lastly, I kept a mare's leg in the basement, hidden in the pantry behind rows of mason jars filled with pears and peaches. I cleaned these every Sunday, disassembling them and making sure they were in order. As I walked through the house checking each gun, the firing pins were missing. Let me repeat that. The firing pins and the guns I cleaned every Sunday like clockwork were missing. The only gun that had been tampered with was the mare leg downstairs. The lines of the dust hadn't even been disrupted. The gun was still able to fire without complications. I went back upstairs and sat in the living room, trying to let my wife rest while I had a panicked breakdown. In the span of less than 24 hours, I had learned that a company was apparently making a biological Ebola weapon. I've been confronted by men in suits who claimed to represent said company. I don't know my tractors explode, nearly killing my wife. I come home to find someone had tampered with my belongings in an attempt to make me be unable to defend myself. What the fuck was going on here? My first concern was for Faye. Was someone targeting both of us? Just her? How would I be able to protect her? I thought back over the day and remembered the maroon sedan that had been driving past when the tractor exploded. There was nothing noteworthy about it, but an instinct told me to watch for it again. I had a gun shop on the errand list of the fridge and went to sleep, resolving to keep an eye out for the sedan. It didn't help. Over the next weeks, I recognized the pattern of 3 distinct cars following my wife and I around town. There was a black Honda, a maroon sedan, and a dark blue motorcycle. When I would take the puppy outside, one would inevitably drive down the road when I was outside. When we would go to the movies, one would be even parked within 5 spaces of our car. I even started noticing them at family gatherings, driving past when my cousin had a birthday party when we visited Faye's grandmother at the nursing home. And at the same time, more accidents began to occur around our house. The heat would miraculously go out, only for a repairman to say that we lucked out because if I hadn't come when I did, you have a pretty serious buildup of carbon dioxide here. The springs in the garage door suddenly began failing, almost crushing the puppy when I was working outside. The power brakes went out in my car, forcing me to cruise on the breakdown lane on the highway until I eased to a stop and put the emergency brake on. Did they know, somehow, that I downloaded that information and kept it? Were these really accidents or attempts on my life? After 3 weeks of this, I got out of bed in the middle of the night and checked the guns again. No missing pieces. I sat in the dark to think. Deleting the information wouldn't help. If they knew I had it, they wouldn't know I deleted it. If push come to shove, it was the only leverage I had. The email had come to me by mistake, so it wouldn't be logical to assume Faye had read it. She had been on the tractor I usually use when it exploded. It was clear to me that I had been meant to be on it, not her. The accidents had only started around the house since the visit by the 2 men, Rain and Frohl. I hadn't seen them again in person, but the trio of vehicles were ever present. A real part of me wanted to take out my guns and go hunting, but this wasn't the Wild West. I wasn't going to risk someone getting shot in the crossfire, and I wasn't sure the police would even accept my story. If this company had the capacity to find me in less than 24 hours, how could I wouldn't be sure they wouldn't fabricate evidence against me? Should I tell Faye about all this? She was my wife, my partner. I knew she'd be in my corner 100%, but I couldn't risk her safety. Looking back, I know this sounds gelatinous, but I'm not. Faye was more talented than I was in areas. I was raised to believe that A man protects his family, no matter what. Discounting the problems with the ventilation system, everything that had happened was directed at me. If I told her, she'd become as legitimate as a target as I was. As long as these people were trying to provocatively silence a leak, I suppose I'll be their way of saying it. My wife was in danger of being collateral damage. Her remaining that way was not an option, and I had to think of a way to ensure her safety permanently. I was out of options, at least the ones that left me in a position that I wanted to be in, namely with my wife, safe in the life that we had built. The only option I had left would keep me alive and keep my wife and family safe was to do one thing I didn't want to do. I had to disappear. Vanish out of the clear blue sky and make it as close to impossible as I could to find me. Once I was off the grid, I could find a way to either expose the company or make some kind of deal with them. I couldn't expect Faye to follow me, nor I want to expose her to that level of danger. I would have to abandon the love of my life, every accomplishment I earned, in order to survive this, at least temporarily. I know one thing for sure. I was so fucked.